part 2 of whatever the hell this will be called in the end, which is currently a working title. Based on a conversation we had off I was going to say off camera. We're not on camera. Anyways, so last episode we discussed what do I enjoy about this moment, and then that kind of took off a little bit more, and we kind of went into, I kind of challenged everyone and said, I think this might potentially be the best year ever, and everyone kind of gave their opinions and thoughts. So now we're moving on to another question, which is all about service. It's all about purpose. It's all about what am I doing on this planet that benefits not just myself. Yeah, so it could be just it benefits one other person or 10 people or 100 people or whatever. But the question is, how can I help? And that's all about, like I said, doing something that is beneficial to more than just, myself, the individual. So people, do you feel like if you are doing something that benefits someone else, does that help improve your happiness? Does that help increase your happiness? Do you feel happy when you're helping others?
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, listening to you asking that question, Manager, has reminded that the very topical at the moment. Everyone's talking about acts of service, isn't it? There's different ways you can help people. There's 5 ways. Can't remember them all actually. I might Google them in a second when you're talking. But you've got like physical help. You've got gift giving. You've got
volunteering.
Yeah, all different ways. The different languages of helping others. But for some people, they appreciate certain ways of being helped more than others.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not one way you can help everyone equally. Some people won't appreciate it. Some people don't like being told directions, for example. They hate it, even though it's very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It puts them in a bad mood. So yeah, it's about knowing your audience.
I feel like it's important to help those that want help, because if someone's not ready for help or they didn't request it or whatever, but you still want to do something nice for them, then it might not be the appreciation of what you're doing might not be there, and so you might not actually feel the benefit of helping that person because they didn't appreciate it, or do you see what I mean? So I think for me it's important to try and help those that actually want help, at that moment or at that time when they want it or need it. And one thing I do as well is I'm very mindful of when I can and when I cannot help. Do you know what I mean? So I tend to say, like, if someone says, oh, can you do this, or I might need a favor from you or whatever, my usual response is, I'll do what I can. Whatever I'm able to do, I will definitely do. But if I can't help or I can't, do what you need me to do or whatever, then I just won't be able to do that. You know what I mean? Anyone else want to chime in?
I'd say this question, I don't know if this goes slightly off topic, I'll try not to, but it always reminds me of that episode of Friends where Joey's talking about there's no such thing as a selfless good deed.
Okay. I don't remember that episode, but
basically the concept is that whenever you do something for someone else, it makes you feel good. So it's always slightly
there is a selfish
reason for it.
I can understand. And
when you think of it like that, there's no reason not to try and help people out. Like wherever you see it in your life, I think you should just try and lend a hand if you can, and if it doesn't severely put you in a bad place. Because it benefits you too.
Yeah, that's why I think it's important to know that whatever I can do, I will do, because sometimes you just can't help someone or something, and it could be a minor thing, could be a major thing. I mean, I'm not a professional counselor, I'm not a professional psychiatrist, but I feel like I'm a good listener. So even if it's just are you just feeling a bit stressed out and you just want to just talk about it, then give me a call, give me a shout.
You are good,
what I mean? And you can vent to me. You know what I mean?
But I think in this day and age where everyone's so used to being heard and shouting, like listening has probably never been so underrated as a friend superpower, or a social superpower really.
And I think our social media world today, because everyone can just express themselves and say whatever they want, whether it's horrible, whether it's nice, da, 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 da. So I think you're right. The listening skill, because everyone's just able to say what they want or express or type or post a meme that sums up what I'm thinking or whatever. So I think listening skill is definitely something that needs to be
There's a
practiced.
really interesting case of this where, psychotherapy, one of the sort of most recognised form of helping someone, your therapy. And there's many different ways you can do it. You go CBT, EFT, I think it's called, you get the Freud school, but the amazing thing, and they can't explain it, is that all recognised schools of therapy have exactly the same rate of success, despite being founded on completely different scientific sort of psychological principles. It doesn't make any sense. How can they all be equally as good? And the only theory is that just the act of listening is the powerful bit, and the rest is all window dressing. And there might be things that work better for other people, but it's just the listening is the process, not what the process is. Which, of course, is how you can also get very corrupt processes as well. If a politician says he's listening to you, and you feel he is, then you're more likely to respond to that.
I see what you're saying. So in that analogy, so you kind of like mentioning kind of corruption, for example. So in terms of me being able to get someone's attention so they can listen to me, and I can try and influence them.
But also their way round. If you feel like you're angry and you get a populist leader who's saying stuff that feels like is exactly what you're feeling, then you feel like, even if you're never going to meet Donald Trump or Boris Johnson, you feel like they're responding to why you're angry. They are listening somehow, even though they never meet them. And they have this huge cult allegiance to the leader.
Yeah, very true.
Because the leader understands.
Yeah, the leader seems to just say what I'm thinking. Yeah, interesting. What about you, sir?
Yeah, going back to what Dylan was saying, because there is this notion that it's a form of, you feel a bit lost in life, just the secret is to help people and find your way through that. And there is something to be said about it. There's sort of like this sort of, to be in service now is seen as a way to help yourself. I don't see it that clearly. I mean, there's levels to it. There's like, I do a job that's helping people, and yet fundamentally I do enjoy the fact I get to help people, but it comes at a burden if you're just helping for the sake of helping, and at a level where your job is to help people. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of jobs that are in service of the people. Do these people come home happy? Not really. It's a big burden to weigh. But there's also this thing I see where people don't intend to help anyone, and they go chasing after something, maybe for years, or a career, or something or other, or just a mountain they want to get to the top of, and they get there and they're not actually happy. And that's quite interesting, because that often seems to lead to providing a service, in terms of if you crash and burn, you really do learn something about yourself, and then you seem to feel compelled to help people in a very different way, in that it really means something to you. So you're not just there as a sounding board, you really do have this knowledge to impart, and you're invested. And probably when you get through to people that way, after that level of an ordeal, you probably feel very good then. And that's probably, I think, what people are getting at, especially celebrities like Arnold, in their rules of success, it's always give back. But think about what he went through. I'm sure he wasn't thinking about that in his egomania days, but in the end you learn so much just from your successes and failures, that you're really in a position to help. And I think that's an important thing. And don't get me wrong, there are some great people, and it's the best thing in the world is to be like a nurse who I'm just here to help people. That's exactly what you need in this world, but don't necessarily think it's a one-way ticket to happiness, because it's a big burden to take on other people's problems, is what I think.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because especially, I don't want to rehash my thing about whether 2020 is going to be, the best year or whatever, but it's certainly going to be an extremely impactful year. And I think part of that reason is because society's awareness on a whole of what service is, the whole thing of what is essential and what is non-essential. and who do we need to keep things ticking over, and who do we not need to keep things ticking over. I think that's an important point, that something like, being a nurse or that kind of profession, where it can be incredibly stressful, and you're dealing with all kinds of individuals, and some people don't appreciate that help and stuff. You might be saving someone's life, but let's say someone was taken into hospital because they just tried to commit suicide, and you're trying to save their life, but that individual was trying to take their own life. And initially they might be like, you're helping me, but I don't like that. I didn't want that in the first place. So there's got to be a lot of things that impacts the people that are trying to help, that can take away from their own individual happiness. So even though they're doing a role which, on paper looks like, oh man, you're doing so much for so many people, and surely that should make you feel amazing. But it's like, the daily grind and daily stress and the red tape and the bureaucracy and all those other elements, which is, not to rehash my point, but I'm gonna have to, right? Because I feel like 2020 is the year where we can reassess on such a large scale all of those kinds of elements, and so that's why I feel like I'm trying to reiterate that point, because I feel like it's an important one for people to me, this is an opportunity that we should try and take hold of, like, for example, I've been seeing a counselor in these last few months, because a lot of stuff's happened in my life, etc., and with the situation of being in quarantine, etc., so the self-assessment that you're able to do, and I need to improve such and such aspect of my life, and so how do I go about it, and etc. And I feel like it's been an opportunity, and I'm trying to utilize that opportunity to the best of my ability. So that's why I would like as many people as possible to try and utilize this see this as an opportunity. And sometimes that won't be easy, because maybe you might not you might have lost your job, or you might have lost your business in this period and stuff like that, and so you're going through a lot of stress and stuff at the moment, and when you're experiencing that stress, it's hard to be able to see the wood for the trees. But I think knowing that you are truly not the only person in that predicament can sort of help soften that blow a little bit, and at least help you feel like, what can I do for me then in this situation to improve it, and that might lead to, if I might need some other people to be able to help me out of this situation, and if I'm gonna ask them to help me, then how am I gonna help them back? And that can kind of help, produce that kind of idea of service for others, and doing something that benefits more than just me, which will ultimately still benefit me.
And the big difference this time is there really are. We've never had it before where everyone is pretty much going through the same thing at the same time. So in theory, people can be more aligned than ever. But everyone will deal with this in different ways.
Absolutely.
And it's already been interesting just to watch the people around us. Some have literally seen this as a chart. Right, I'm resetting. They've got charts on the wall. I'm ready to go, because they know what's coming next. And then you've got people who have decided, well, my life was so hard that I've been given this time, I'm going to do nothing. And they're not thinking about the future. Now, they're very happy in the moment because of that. But maybe that is the right way to behave. And then there's people who are just worried about everything. But yeah, I certainly do like, when I can lie awake at night and think about it all, and I can see a worst case scenario, but I do take some assurance from knowing, well, actually, so-and-so is going through this, so-and-so's predicament is this, so-and-so doesn't even see any friends for the last 4 months. So all this has to factor in. And you have to be bold to admit that you're actually comparing yourself to other people in these scenarios, but in this case, you really can, because you're all going through it. And if you're thinking like that, just pick up the phone and call them. That's what I'd say. And I've certainly enjoyed doing things like phone calls, and I don't do all this Zoom crap. I'm too old for that.
I'm certainly not a fan of it myself, but I don't really have the tech to be able to do it properly. So.
that's a different podcast.
John, you were speaking about like types of help that at your workplace, yeah, like the stuff that you like helping, and I was wondering if you had an example, because there's I liked what you're saying, but I was like,
So at my workplace, I help at the very grassroots level. As in, I get people turning up, don't know what they want to do, and they're very angry. Life has thrown them a bad hand or bad circumstance, but they're coming to a place ultimately where they're supposed to be able to do leisurely courses and find new interests and hobbies. But it can take a while to get to that for some people because they're so in need of help that they don't really know where to start. They've just been directed here for whatever reason, and to sift through those feelings they have, and like when it's directed in a form of anger or a form where they just want to speak with no clear plan, that to have that person after person in an organization where you're also supposed to get through people one after the next, it's very sapping, and I can't take too much joy from that because I don't. Half the time, it's just someone unhappy with me because I'm a sounding board. That being said, you get the odd people that you carry through to the next level, or you carry through for 2 years, and then that can make you feel good. Seeing transformation is a great thing. But what I will say also is, at the same time, I teach as well, and I do that at a higher level. It's like this time I'm imparting a skill, and the reaction to that is so different that you just get people thanking you because they want to lap up the knowledge. So you feel very differently about that form of help compared to the other form of help. Although, of course, the people really need the help at the level that isn't making you that happy because they're really lost. But in terms of what helps you to feel good, it's quite interesting how you look at it because you can be helping people is a very sapping thing, and some people give their lives just to help others and really don't look after themselves. And if you really want to be able to help someone, you've got to be able to look after yourself ultimately because you've got to set an example.
I think that's an important point, that you can kind of get lost in just trying to help others and you forget about yourself and your own individual. And I feel like that's happened to me in many ways, which is why, like I said, I've been doing counselling and stuff like that, because I feel like my circumstances growing up and different experiences that I've had, etc., etc. There was a lot of instability anyway in many of my younger years. So I've kind of dedicated myself. I've done a lot of youth work, community work, working with different sectors of different communities and whatever. And then I got into education and been working in education and SEN and mainstream and etc., etc. But I've been pushing myself in that kind of direction and kind of forgot about making sure that I was in a state of mind and a physical and emotional state that felt balanced enough to be able to handle everyone's problems that I'm trying to help. Or whether I'm teaching English or I'm supporting a student, academically and helping them create a timetable for themselves so they're more organized. And whatever I'm doing, like, I need to make sure I'm also as balanced as possible, because then it just becomes, and I think this is what has happened previous to this year in many ways, is that we're very hypocritical as human beings. So I'm trying to get someone to, why don't you try this to make yourself feel happy, or why don't you try this to improve yourself, or why don't you try this so you learn better, or but I've kind of I'm giving advice that I'm not necessarily following myself.
Yeah, and that's a big thing.
And there is a huge hypocritical part of society in that way, where we like to tell others what to do and give advice and but we don't always follow the advice that we're giving to others. Do you know what I mean? It's interesting. Any thoughts? Well, any thoughts on the sort of hypocritical aspect of and to some degree that I think that's a little bit part of nature. I don't have any kids, but I can understand that if I have kids, for example, I might, as an adult, you can get away with, you can do much more than you might allow a child to do, isn't it? So you're trying to guide them in the right way and etc. And you might swear when you chat to your friends, but you might tell the child to not swear when you see them speaking to their friend, for example, just as a little example type of thing. So yeah, any thoughts on how do we try and balance out or reduce that sort of hypocritical aspect?
I don't know if I wouldn't say it's hypocritical. I think it's just at least it's not intentionally hypocritical. I think when you're talking to someone else and trying to help them, sometimes it can bring a clarity in your mind that you don't get when you're looking at yourself, because you're in the situation. You can't see it from like the outside. You can't actually see what you're doing wrong. So sometimes I think hypocritical can be harsh. I know you didn't intend it that way on like some people in situations where they're blind to help themselves, and they need someone just to give them that
outsider's perspective.
That outsider perspective, see what they're doing wrong. But I do think there are also opposite situations where sometimes maybe someone's been doing the wrong thing and you've been trying to help them, or other people have been trying to help them over and over, and they might just need that like cut off, which maybe some people have been helped by the isolation through that. They need to just be on their own to think, what am I doing wrong, without other people telling me what I'm doing wrong. Because it's all based on your personality, but some people find it to be like almost like they're being blamed for the situation they're in rather than being helped.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think there's definitely a lot of personalities that find it hard to accept help. So you might be saying, "Hey, man, look, I think you're taking on too much. Why don't you try and reduce it?" And that person won't necessarily understand that you're trying to say that for their benefit. They might think, "Oh, you don't think I can handle this? Well, I'm going to show you, and I'm going to bloody take on even more." You know what I mean? But some personalities are like that. It can be a bit of a, not minefield, but sometimes you have to strategize about how you approach certain people and how to help, or if I say this in a certain way, that person won't take it on board, but if I say it in this way, then they're probably more likely to listen, etc., etc. So yeah, sometimes you have to navigate. That's the word I was looking for. You have to navigate how to approach helping someone based on their personality or etc. We agree? Okay. Yeah. I think we can cut this off at that point. I think that we could definitely carry on this conversation in the future, but we'll cut that off at this point for this whatever podcast thing that I don't remember whatever the name was initially. Peace.